Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and today we're going to be talking about how to make a character in Anima Beyond Fantasy. Now, this is an important video since I'm going to be talking about it anyway, and as well, I don't know what it is, but something about character creation in Anima Beyond Fantasy completely blows a lot of people's minds. I've seen a few videos now, and they treat it like some very esoteric thing. Yeah, sure, this is a lot more than your standard tabletop. Kind of. I hope you can do some basic arithmetic because honestly, I should say, it's as convoluted as you want to make it. If you are looking to create a crazy kind of character concept, then yeah, I would say that this game is a little bit more hardcore than I think a lot of people are probably comfortable with, but it's by all means not accessible. There's a lot you could really do that's just basic. And in fact, today we're going to be going over basic character concept creation. If you're doing something that's just so easy to step into that when you make your first character, I mean, like for a first game for a group, I should advise everyone to make characters like the character we're going to be making today. But this is by no means a good character as far as like what the system is capable of, and I'll get into that, but it is passable for getting your feet wet in the system, which I recommend everyone do, because I've not met a single person who has not messed up the first character they've made in this game. And that's not because it's hard, it's because this game is just you have to know a lot in order to make a good character. And this game definitely will let you make a bad character. So we're going to hop on over to another screen here where, ta-da, we have Dude Awesome Man, and we're going to be doing this on Paint because, well, what can I say? I tried finding some editable character sheets out there. They used to exist, but now a lot of those links just don't work anymore. And this game has fallen so by the wayside. So as far as character creation is concerned, we're going to be doing it mostly here on this screen, though I'm going to pop some stuff up for you guys so that you understand what I'm talking about. So first and foremost, a lot of the stuff here in the player box is non-essential, though you do need to know that you start off with 600 development points. Why is it white? It should be black. 600 development points. And that looks like a lot of development points. That's an amount of development points that will make you think, oh man, this is going to be really complicated. It's not, because we're going to be cutting this number in half very soon. And also in Anima Beyond Fantasy, this is a point buy system, and most things you end up buying are at least 2 for 1. So you're going to spend 2 development points to get 1 point in something else. So by that kind of design, this is actually 300 points. And like I said, we're already going to be spending about half of that right out the gate. So you're only going to have to worry about 150 points, actually. Now, the kind of character we're going to make today is a character who is very good at a very core and fundamental thing in the game, but isn't overly complicated. We're going to be first looking at what class we're going to be playing. And that is going to be the Shadow. And I think this guy obviously looks like a cool, awesome man. So that's why we're named that. So classes in Anima Beyond Fantasy are more like character building structures. A framework, if you will, that tells you how your points are delineated onto your character sheet and generally what the character is about. Now, the Shadow is a fighter prowler archetype, which all you need to know is that they do stealthy stuff and they're good at fighting. But more importantly than that, they have this special feature down here called +5 per level to key concealment, only if developed. Key concealment is a very good skill to have in this game because any characters who can detect key can detect pretty much any living kind of person. And it is something that goes through walls. It's a sense that can lead people to you. And there's no way to improve key concealment outside of the kind of way that it's done. You can do it by improving other skills, but you can't put points directly into key concealment. So having a character class that is based on leveling up just this one thing is really, really good. And not only that, but this class does what a lot of characters would typically do during the course of an entire campaign. Predominantly, they have a high notice and search and a high hide and stealth. Anima Beyond Fantasy is a very interesting game where there are skills in this game, or secondary abilities, as it's called in the system, that are both active and passive. Notice is the passive version of search. So anything that tries to get by your character is going to be based on their notice. While if your character is actively looking for something, they're going to have to use their search. That's terrible game design because that means a character can very easily notice someone sneaking up on them, but are really terrible at looking for things directly. Like, they're like, someone's sneaking up on me, but then they're hiding in the shadows and like, I can't see them. It's very dumb, but it's what this game, it's some of the jank that we like about this game. Hide and stealth are very much the same thing. Hide is the passive version and stealth is the active version. So if someone is looking over your position, they're going to use your hide as their DC essentially. But stealth is what you use to get by someone by bypassing their notice. So they are intermixed, and these are very good skills generally to have. And also something to consider as well is we have a bonus to both our attack and dodge. In this game, there are two types of defense, dodge and block. Typically, if you want to make a good character, you focus on one of these two. And dodge is the better one by far because it works better against projectiles, though blocking is better if you have a shield and you're going full armor. But I would still say dodge is better in most situations. So this is just really good to have. And getting attack per level is also really, really good. So now that we're familiar generally with the idea for this character and this class, we need to decide what we're going to overall be focusing on and how we're going to make this character. Now, I'm already going to be getting into some kind of in-game knowledge stuff, but this is very baseline and like very easy to pick up once you kind of taken a look at the book for yourself, which, by the way, I'm going to provide a link to the Anima website down below where you can get links to the RPG drive-thrus for each of the books and find out some other stuff they're currently doing. So check out the description down below, and hey, leave a like if you want to see more Anima content, and subscribe, because a lot of people unsubscribed because I said I wasn't going to do Pathfinder anymore. Which, to be fair, I will get back to Pathfinder. It'll just be much, much later. All right, so we're going to do a lot of points right out the gate. You see here in primary combat abilities, we're going to get rid of half of our abilities right away. So this says a limit of 60%. So 60% of the 600 points can be spent only in the combat category, essentially. But there is an additional rule right here that says that we actually can only spend 50% of our total points in attack, block, and dodge. So of our 600 points, only 300 of them can go into our attack and our block. And since Anima is essentially a combat game, we're going to do that because that's objectively the best thing to do for our character. Now, this is kind of the thing for most characters, kind of. Key techniques and abilities can kind of get around that, but that's way too complex, and we'll talk about that in a different video. And I also want to say as well that this video is kind of made under the assumption that you're playing just with the core book for your first time to see if you like the game or not, because that's what I would recommend before buying a whole series of books of a game that almost no one has ever heard of. So we're only going to be using stuff from the core book with some of the errata from the errata book that's only in Spanish, but that's only a very small part of it, and don't worry about it. I'm not going to make you read Spanish. So we have 600 points, and we are going to put half of that directly into our attack and our dodge, because that is the kind of character we're playing. So first and foremost, on your character sheet, you would write in these little boxes here the costs for the said trait. So for attack, for instance, it's 2 for 1 based on our class. And the same goes for our dodge as well. Okay, and just so you know where it is on the character sheet, it is right here. So the cost for attack is 2 for every +1, and it's the same for dodge. If we wanted to go block, it would be 3 for 1, which is very bad and very point inefficient. And we also have wear armor, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and as well, we're probably also going to talk about key. But that is going to be a little bit later. All right, so now we're going to put our points in. Our points will go directly into our base. So for attack, we are going to put in half, and we have to balance these because your attack and your defense stats cannot be more than 50 points apart. And to be honest, if you don't want your character to die real quick, you want to balance these as much as possible. So we have 300 development points, and since these are both 2 for 1, we can consider that to be 150 points. And I'm probably going to be doing some kind of math on screen during editing, so it's a little bit easier. So you can more or less consider that we're going to be putting 75 points, half of 150, into each of these bases. And the text font I have is just a skosh too big. So let's shrink that down. There we go. That looks nice and good. And we're going to do this for our dodge as well. Okay. Now, you might be asking, Bad Luck, why are you doing this first? This is not the first step in character creation, and there should be a lot more things we consider. Yes, I agree. But the thing is, when it comes to games like this, people always panic right away when they see something like 600 development points. That's just something that's huge. Now, we can consider that we've actually spent 300 of 600, and we are barely, well, I mean, this video is, 15 minutes in? But during your character creation, that's something you can knock out in the first couple minutes. So we're already halfway done with our development points. Now, we're going to do some stat allocation, because this is a very big part of our character sheet. Now, if we go back to our class, you can see here that we're focused primarily on attack and dodge, and we're going to be using the skills Notice, Search, Hide, and Stealth. Going back to our character sheet, we can see that attack uses dexterity, dodge uses agility, and a lot of our stats use, let's see, perception here, which is our Notice and Search, both use the perception traits, or the perception attributes, which perception is a different attribute in this game, unlike other games that use wisdom. And we're going to be using hide, which is also perception, and then stealth, which is also agility. So we have 3 core stats that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at dex, we're going to be looking at agility, and we're going to be looking at perception. These are our 3 core attributes that we want to be the highest that we can for the character we're making. Though you're free to make, honestly, whatever kind of character you want. As long as you have a decent dex and agility, you should be generally fine as far as combat is concerned. Anima has random generating stats for characteristics or attributes or ability scores, however you want to do it for your game. And I'm not a big fan of this. I use a static array, but we're going to be using method 1 here because this is, I think, the most interesting and fair for character creation. And as well, it's something that I think a lot of people will gravitate towards. If you want to know my static array, there's 8 attributes. So I use 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6, 6, 5. No stats in the negatives. Negatives are anything 4 and lower. So 4 gives you a -5 on an attribute, and lower is even worse than that. I use a static array because, 1, I don't like randomly generating stats for characters. It just inherently makes the playing field uneven at the start. I know people don't like that, but whatever. I think I just prefer my players to be on even grounds, at least to begin with, at the very least. And 2, it feels bad if you have a specific character in mind and you don't have the stats for it. When you have a static array, then you can't really argue, and you would start building character concepts around the array. But if you have a random generation of stats, well, it's hard to kind of form characters unless you roll your stats. And a lot of GMs don't want you rolling your stats that are right under their own nose. So we're going to be using method 1 here. The other methods are just different ways of doing these stats, but method 1 is the best by my opinion. And so we've come to a dice roller. Method 1, you roll 8 d10s, re-rolling 1s, 2s, and 3s. So your minimum result is a 4 and your maximum result is a 10. So we're just going to go ahead and start off with a 4. That's great. That's okay. Because also with method 1, after you're done rolling these stats, you're going to be dropping your lowest one and changing it to a 9. So I'm going to add another d10. Another 4. Oh, no. All right. We're about to see my namesake right here live. Third die. 6. That's not bad. Fourth die. 5. Woo! We're really not doing well today. Another 5. Oh, good. Another 5. That's very statistically unlikely. A 3. Okay, so we'll actually take that 3 out and we'll re-roll that. An 8. That's good. That's good. Please give us a 10. Please just give us something good. Another 6. Oh, so now you know why I don't like randomly generating stats. If I was the GM, I would let you re-roll this. So we're going to do that. All right, starting out was new. Oh, God. Please. Please roll above. Please roll above a 5. Okay, I'll take a 7. All right, here we go. All right, well, that's okay. Well, we're not keeping that. Oh, we got 10. Okay, here's some good stats. These are some good looking stats. Another 5. That's okay. That's okay. A 9. That's good. That's good. Another 10. Wow, this is the exact opposite of what I just rolled. A 3, we don't keep that, so we're going to reroll that. A 7, that's good. And a 5. Okay, lots of 5s, lots of 10s. Okay, so now we know why I don't like randomly, because these two characters would have been very, very different statistically speaking. Because we're using method 1, we're also going to drop the lowest roll, which is a 5, and so we're going to consider one of these 5s as another 10. All right, so now that we have our 10 stats, or 8 stats rather, we're going to be slotting these in to our attributes or our characteristics, and then I'm going to show you how this is going to generally apply to our character sheet. So first and foremost, Dex and Agility are really good. Dex being our attack stat and Agility being our defense stat and our stealth stat. So with that being taken into consideration, we're going to put our 10s into our combat stats because I'm assuming most of you like combat. So we got a 10 there. Do that there. We actually have and then we have 9s, right? Yeah. We have 2 9s. So I'm going to highly recommend that we're going to put a 9 in our perception here because that is very core to our main function for the party. We are going to be our team's scout, more or less. And honestly, being a scout in this game is insanely good. Then we're going to put the last one in Constitution. Another combat stat, true, but also being dead is less fun than being alive. So let's do that. Also, HP is very particular. I would never give you less HP than like a 7 minimum. And we'll look at the HP chart here in just a little bit. But now we're going to want to look at all our other stats. We have 2 7s and 2 5s. Now our damage is going to be based off of our strength. So we're going to put one of our 7s here in strength. Now, if you wanted to put con or change your con and your strength here, that's completely on you. I would rather be alive than hit a little bit harder. And the difference is only 5 points, which you'll see here in just a moment. Then what do we want our final? Oh, yes. So I would recommend, if you're playing any kind of martial character, or actually most characters in general, that you have a pretty good power score. Mostly because any of the supernatural skills, whether it's magic or whether it's key abilities, which is the more martial leaning ones, are going to have a very strong affinity for power. I mean, magic even more so. But there's a lot of stuff in the key abilities that are very much power based. So that leaves 5 for our intelligence and 5 for our willpower. All right, so we have the base characteristics put in. And before we change these, because we will probably be changing these, we are going to put in the bonuses so you guys can see statistically what these numbers even mean. So you're going to confer with this chart here, here, right above me, and you can see here that a result of 5 is a 0. A result of 6 and 7 are plus 5. 8 and 9 are plus 10. 10 is plus 15. And 11 and higher are even higher. Though, at character creation, you cannot have a characteristic above 11 unless it's a mental characteristic, which is talked about in here. So limits on human characteristics. 10 represents the maximum value of a human characteristic. Though GMs, however, may permit them to go beyond this limit with character creation points or by increasing with level. So 10 is generally considered the human maximum, though you can, with an advantage, go to 11 in at least your physical characteristics. All right, so I went ahead and already put up all the bonuses here. As you can see, we may change these stats during character creation, but this is just so you can get a general idea of what you were looking at. So in our good stats, we have plus 15 and plus 10. In our bad stats, we have plus 5 and 0. Now, a 5-point difference might seem like a lot, but if you actually change this to more of like a D20 system, that's just a 1-point difference. So if you were to compare this to, say, like D&D or Pathfinder 2nd Edition, then a plus 15 is more like a plus 3, a plus 10 is more like a plus 2, and a plus 5 is more like a plus 1. And a 0 is obviously still a null, a 0. So in Anima Beyond Fantasy, this is a D100 system. It's not a percentile system, it's a D100 system. Everything we're going to be rolling is to get as high a number as possible, with a D100 being our base roll. And there are open rolls if we roll a 90 or above, and we can crit fail at a 3 or below, though that can also change with advantages, which we'll get to in a little bit. But how these numbers are now going to affect our character, if we go back down to our attack and our dodge here, we can see that now we have plus 15s in these, and we have a class bonus of plus 5. And now that we have all the bonuses here, we're going to add in our finals, though we may adjust these a little bit later. Now we have plus 5s for our class, because as you remember, our shadow gets that every level. So at level 1, we get plus 5, obviously. So starting off, we have 95 in our attack and our dodge. Now that's actually really, really good starting off. Getting a 10 in both dex and agility was a pretty good godsend stat-wise. So when we roll at D100, we're going to add 95 to the result, meaning on average, we're going to get a 145 give or take, which is a pretty substantial amount. And Anima is a contested roll system. So in combat, we are going to roll and our enemies are going to roll to see, if we deal damage or if we take damage. So if we attack them, we're going to roll our attack versus their defense and vice versa. So having really good numbers is very solid. And I will say that most enemies roughly starting off have an 80 in their attack and defense. So at level 1, we are at least a little bit ahead of the curve. We're a plus 1.5 or not 1.5, a plus 2.5 if we're comparing this to something like D&D or Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So we've done kind of the basics for starting our character off. We still have half of our development points, and we haven't even chosen our advantages and disadvantages. So in Anima Beyond Fantasy, you start off with 3 creation points, as you can read here on the screen beside me. Creation points give us advantages, which are statistical advantages for our character, or even some narrative ones. For instance, the charm skill, you can see it right here in the corner right above my head, makes it where we have a baseline positive reaction with people, even if we don't know them. That is something completely determined by the GM, and kind of one of the weird parts about this system, because we have charts and tables and numbers for everything, but then we have stuff like this that is just completely narratively based and adjudicated by the GM. So, be that as it is, we're going to pick some stuff that's a lot more mechanically beneficial for our first character, but this game allows you to make any kind of character, and as well, characters are broken for good or for bad through the advantage and disadvantage system. Now, I recommend starting off with our disadvantages. Disadvantages are where we're going to get more creation points that we can then put into our advantages. Now, these also are mechanical and narrative. For instance, something like unfortunate here, just misfortune follows our character wherever we go. The GM gets to just randomly have bad things happen to our character, and we get a benefit of 1 point. That means that we gain 1 creation point. Now, I will say all these are definitely not even, as atrophied limb here is a -80 to all physical reactions related to a limb that is no longer serviceable. So maybe our arm was horribly mangled in a terrible accident, and we can't use that arm. So anytime we use that arm, we subtract 80 from all actions relating to that. So that plus 95 we have for our attack, for instance, yeah, that would become a plus 15 only, which is very low in this system. And this is also worth 1 point. Now, if you're going to ask me, randomly falling into traps, I think, is just better on average. And let's take a look at something like severe allergy here. Severe allergy is just a 1 point benefit that you're allergic to something like milk. Boo-hoo. Then I guess just hope no one finds out and throws milk on you. So you get a -40 or a -80 depending on how much you're affected by this. So you eat a peanut, you're probably at a -80, but if peanut dust gets blown on you, maybe you just break out in hives and it's a -40. Granted, this is to all actions rather than just related to a specific limb. So severe allergy, I think, is one of the ones that people pick up a lot. Also, there's something like easily possessed, which is just, if your game has possession, that's bad, but if it doesn't, then this is just a free point. This is where the GM will probably step in during your character creation to either accept or unaccept certain types of advantages or disadvantages. So, yeah. Also, I'm sure some of you have noticed attractive or unattractive above me, rather. So, yeah, you can be ugly just as a disadvantage, which doesn't actually have anything on it specifically. Though you do technically roll for how beautiful your character is, and I guess we should do that for Dude Awesome Man. So we get to roll another D10, 10 being good, 1 being bad, and we are of moderate attractiveness. So we're going to go to our Dude Awesome Man character sheet here, and we're going to go to the top, and I believe appearance, yep, is right here. And so we're going to put our standard 5, which, honestly, for the kind of character we're playing, that might be good. We are rather unrecognizable, rather unremarkable appearance-wise, and thus maybe we're harder to notice. Who knows? But that is a stat in this game. Also, size is another stat in this game. It doesn't really do a whole lot, but... And I'm not necessarily going to get into it. Well, I guess I should, right? This is a character creation video. So to find our size, we go to the size part here in the character creation part. And what it does is you add your character's strength and your constitution scores. And then, we have a range based on that. Now, our constitution was 9 and our strength was 7, giving us 16. And so... we are between 5'8" and 6'10", that's huge, and we also weigh between 155 pounds and 485 pounds. So, This chart is hilarious to me because, again, we have narrative advantages, but this could just be a narrative thing, right? The numbers could just be narratively determined, but no, we have actual numbers attached to these things. So we will just put on our character size that we are a size 16. And some gender favoritism here. If you happen to be female, you can subtract a point from your size if you wish. So you could be a size smaller if you are female only, not if you're a man, which is sad, I guess. I don't know. This chart is literally, you could be the same weight and height with that 1 point difference. So I don't even know why it was put here, if I'm going to be completely honest. It doesn't make sense, but here we are. And yes, there are ways you can make some very big and small characters in this game using advantages, disadvantages, and the other races. We're only making a human for this one. We'll get into that in a different video. Now, for our character specifically, we're going to be looking at martial mastery. Now, we're going to need a lot of points in martial mastery because one of our core features is going to be based on our martial knowledge. So, martial mastery gives us a bunch of martial knowledge based on how many points we put into this. I'm going to recommend that we put all 3 points of our starting points into martial mastery. It's only going to benefit our character, and it's going to make us really good at the thing we want to be good at. So martial mastery is definitely something that I'm going to recommend. Now, something I'm also going to make special mention of, the gift down here is required if you're going to play a magic character. We'll get into that in another video. And also, similarly, if you want to play a psychic, you'll need to take access to one psychic discipline or free access to any psychic discipline. One psychic discipline gives us 1, and free access lets us be a psychic of many varieties. This is dependent on your build. Free access is obviously more expensive, but honestly, it's something that if you're going to go a psychic route, you're probably going to lean into the free access route. All right, so for Dude Awesome Man, we're probably going to take 3 disadvantages because our backstory is very dark and full of all kinds of terrible tragedies, and we have a lot of issues that we need to work through over the course of our adventure. So you can take up to 3 disadvantages, and very standardly, you're probably going to have 2 1-pointers and a 2-pointer, but to make things easy, I'm just going to go with 3 1-pointers. So we actually have a total of 6 creation points, meaning since we took 3 points in martial knowledge, or martial mastery rather, then we have 3 other points. So for our character specifically, I'm going to take aptitude in a field. This is going to make our costs for our secondary abilities much lower, and I'm going to apply these to subterfuge, which gives us a lot of skills at dirt cheap prices, and aptitude in a subject. This is because of how notice is going to play a big part in our character sheet. So I'm going to give this to notice specifically, though this will leave search at a standard 2-for-1 cost. All right, so on your second character sheet here, there are up to 4, I think there's even up to 6, depending on what kind of character you make. You're going to find your advantages and disadvantages, and I've already filled them out here. So we have martial mastery at 3 points, we have aptitude in a field at 2 points, and aptitude in a subject at 1 point. And I've made Dude Awesome Man here suffer at any feline touch or appearance. So he has a severe allergy to cats, a severe phobia of cats, and given his terrible backstory, he was saved by a dog, and now if he doesn't pet a dog after so many days, he starts getting high. So he has an addiction to dogs. So an interesting character, giving us 3 additional benefits here. So for a grand total of 6 creation points, which we spent on our advantages. Also, here on the second character sheet, we're going to put down our total martial knowledge. So we gained 120 from our advantage martial mastery, and our class gives us 25. So down here in the martial knowledge, we're going to put down, can you do your numbers? Did you get it right? 145, yeah! I don't mean to demean you or anything. It's just the sheer number of tabletop players I know who do not know common arithmetic is very, very alarming. So it's 145 points. Now, we will get into spending this here in a little bit, but let's go ahead and first finish out the rest of our development points, and then we can worry about everything else. So going back to our class here, we have a limit of 60% in our combat abilities. So I'm going to recommend that we put at least 10 of our development points into our wear armor skill, because one of the best armors in the game, at least if you're not going heavy armor, is the armored longcoat, which gives us a pretty good benefit as long as we have some in our wear armor. So in our wear armor skill, we're going to put 2 because that is the multiples that we go off of. And technically, we only need to put 5 points into this, or I guess we only need to technically put 2 points into this. But that is going to make our character sheet look terrible, and I only put things in 5s and 10s. Hate it if you want, I don't care. I'm going to put at least 10 of our development points here into our wear armor, and since it's 2 for 1, that means we're going to end up with 5 development points, or 5 in our base, rather. And since I know that we have a 5 in our strength, we're going to add 5 here. And that's going to give us a total of 10. And when we're doing our gear and equipment, we'll look at this. Actually, we might do that here in just a moment. But that's 10. That also opens the door for us in the future. So of our 300 points so far that we've spent, or at least 310 now with that, we still have 290 to go, and we have 50 more points we can put into our combat abilities. When you start off in this game, your character knows how to use one weapon or is really good with their hands in hand-to-hand combat. So for our character specifically, I'm going to recommend that we use a bastard sword of some type, or not a bastard sword, a broadsword of some point. So we're going to look at these weapons here, and I'm going to kind of go over why I decided to go with what I did. So the broadsword does 55 base damage plus our strength, and has a speed of -5. That means we subtract 5 from our initiative. And it has a strength requirement of 5. We have a strength of 7, so we don't need to necessarily worry about that. But this, I think, is overall the best sword if we want the most bang for our buck. Though, another sword that we could consider is the longsword. Now, the longsword is 5 less damage, but it doesn't have a penalty to its speed. So this is a little bit faster, but a little bit less damage. Now, in my personal experience, a 5-point difference in initiative is not going to be that big. So I would go for the 5 extra points. But we have one other sword that I would say we should consider, which is the short sword right here. Now, the short sword is much weaker. It only has a base damage of 40, 15 points of damage less, but it gives us a plus 15 to our initiative, and it has the precision trait here. So precision makes it easier for us to target individual limbs in this game. A whole thing I'm not going to go into in this video, but if we want to play a character who is a sneak up, stab them in the back, this is the kind of weapon I would definitely recommend. Though, if we're definitely fighting with our friends more often than not, a broadsword probably is just going to net us more damage over the course of an entire game. The choice is yours, obviously, but I'm just going to go with the broadsword because it's going to make some of this stuff make a little bit more sense. So we know how to use a broadsword, and why I brought this up is because now if we want to learn any other weapons, for instance, we're going to need to spend some of our development points. For our characters specifically, I don't see us really worrying about weapons we're using too much, but if we ever lose our broadsword and need a different sword, we might be in a very bad situation. So having some other weapons in our kit is not necessarily a bad thing. And so that is where combat modules comes into play. So if we want to have proficiency in a different type of weapon, then we would choose similar weapon, or we would choose a whole module that gives us a list of weapons that we can use at essentially a bigger benefit. Typically, if you're getting weapons in the same group, a short sword, for instance, is a small arm, then similar weapon would allow us to use other small arms, say like a stiletto. Mixed class is not very common, and it's a slightly more expensive, and different type or unarmed is 20 development points, which is a lot. Though, something I would consider is something like throwing weapons, because then any throwing weapon that we use strictly for the purpose of throwing that weapon is going to allow us to use 50 development points to be able to throw all of them, which is pretty good. Though if we want to use them in melee, then we lose our proficiency. And as you can see here, we have a combat modifier when we're using weapons of different types. So if it's a similar type of weapon, it's minus 20, but if it's a different weapon, it's a minus 60. So that being said, it's highly, highly, highly recommended that you either pick a full module that gives you a list of weapons to make sure your character has everything they need, or you pick a singular weapon and maybe another similar weapon to kind of augment your kit. Now, I'm going to make mention in this video specifically because it might come up in your games. There are other types of modules, like mystic modules, for instance, which allows you to use your attack as your magic projection for your magic. So if you're a wizard or a warlock who uses melee weapons in addition to magic, maybe you don't want to invest in your magic projection skill, as we saw how expensive those are. So taking this module will allow us to use our actual attack score when we're shooting our magic, which is pretty cool. We also have something similar for psychic, and the other books have a lot of other unique modules and abilities you can use as well. Now, for our character specifically, an idea that I thought was really good and would give us some additional options is to go with different type here. That will be 20 more of our development points, true, but then we can be able to use another really good weapon. And the weapon that I would recommend us using is the parrying dagger. Now, the parrying dagger is really good because not only is it a precision weapon, which I already mentioned before, but it's throwable and it can be used for trapping maneuvers, allowing us to trap an enemy's weapon using it. It is a short arm and it gives us a plus 15 to our initiative, though when you're dual wielding in combat, you take the slower of our two initiatives. Now, I like the parrying dagger in this particular kit because it allows us to have a weapon for dual wielding so that we can lay on some extra hurt on the enemies and have a throwable range option for our character, and it's only 20 development points. So with that in consideration, I'm going to say we're going to invest those development points, allowing us to use both our broadsword and a parrying dagger, putting us at 330, leaving us with 30 points remaining. Now, I'm going to highly, highly recommend that we put the remainder of our points into our key. Looking at our class here, we get a key point for every 2 points that we put into it. So we're going to get 10 more key points, or not 10 more, 15 more key points that we get out of this. And I'm recommending this mostly because, well, it's not necessarily great for us at the beginning of the game. It is going to be very beneficial for us later to have as much key as possible. So this is a good expenditure, especially because when you level up, you're going to have to increase both your attack and your dodge while also having just a few points, just 10%, 10 points every time you level up to put into your other combat stuff if you want to keep up with the attack and defense of enemies per level. Roughly speaking, there's a lot of wiggle room. The Shadow has a lot more wiggle room because it gains attack and dodge per level, but it's just something that I recommend, and people like to invest heavily in their attack and dodge anyway. So getting some extra key points, I think, is definitely the way to go. Now, those key points, technically, by the core rulebook, you have to put into individual stats. And I missed a spot here because this sheet is weird and has holes. But in the errata and in the key book, you use a singular key pool. And we're not going to get too much into key in this video, but this is where you would put your key points at the end of the day. So I'm just going to put that 10 key points here into our strength, which, by the way, so when you are adding your key points during character creation, your stat is how many key points you get. So since we have 7 strength, technically our key in strength would be 17, though I use the general key pool, which just adds them up all together. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill out the rest of these boxes so you can see, but honestly, just use the general key pool. It's the best way to go. I'm not going to talk about accumulations. We're going to make a key character in a different video. So I'll just do this just so you know what to add to your character for your first character sheet. Okay, so there's all our key pools, and as well, you start off with 1 accumulation in each of your accumulations. Again, we'll talk about in a different video, but now you know what generally looks like. When you do the generic key pool, you add all of these up together. All right, so with that said and done, oh, it was 15 points. I was actually wrong. 1 second. Let me correct that. We'll put 5 more points in here. Why not? It was 15 points. I messed up. We had 30 points remaining. Anyway, so that's 360 of our 600, and that's all of our combat allotment. So as you can see here, now we can only put points in the remaining areas. Now we're not doing supernatural stuff, and we're not doing psychic stuff. So we get to move on to secondary abilities. So you will put each of these modifiers into the bubbles on our character sheets over here. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these out, but we did get aptitude in a subject, or in a field rather. So the subterfuge is going to be reduced by 1 point. And as you can see here on our character sheet, our subterfuge is 2. So it's now 1, which is really, really good. All right, so I finished all the bases. Now you know, every time you spend 2 points of development points in any of these categories, you apply that directly to the, or not directly to the base. You get 1 per 2 to the base. So in acrobatics, for instance, if I spent 10 points, we'd add 5 to the base. And special mention, since we have aptitude in a subject, notice here got reduced down from 2 to 1. So that's what these extra bracketed boxes are for. And another special mention as well, the special box down here at the bottom is if you decide, or the GM decides, to add any skills to a game. So overall, this is what we should generally consider, and we know what skills we're going to go for, though I will make special mention that skills like composure and withstand pain are very good, so vigor skills are very good to look at. And as well, there is a memorize skill. So if you're playing like an investigative character, you can actually have a higher memorize, which makes it easier for you to remember certain facts in game, which is pretty cool. And as well, there's a magic appraisal and occult, though you can only use magic appraisal if you have the gift. Now, of course, you can build your character however you want, but for our character, we have a specific goal. We are essentially our group's scout. And for that, we're going to want high notice and high stealth and hide and search technically as well. So we're going to take our remaining 240 points and we're going to divvy these up. So I'm going to say that we're going to try to split evenly between the 2 pools, but since we have reduced costs, we have a lot of leeway. And something to consider as well in this game is this difficulty table right here. So this difficulty table determines essentially what the DCs we're going to need to hit. This isn't like many other games where the GM kind of just decides willy-nilly what DCs are, or maybe they have a certain rubric. These DCs are static. So any moderate action, no matter what level, is going to be an 80 DC. So we know, at least for the beginning of the game, a lot of our checks are probably going to range between moderate and difficult. So as many skills as we can that we can guarantee an 80 in is going to be really, really good. So let's try to put as close to 80 as we can, but we do get some special benefits. First, as I mentioned towards the beginning of this video, we do get plus 10 to a variety of secondary abilities. That's good for our class. So at level 1, we get 4 plus 10s right out the gate. These plus 10s go into the class table here, and I actually need to move my screen over a wee bit so we can see the finals here. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out the class benefits, and the characteristics we have are also considered here. We don't write those numbers down, though you could technically write those in the base, but they are added to the final. I'm going to write them in the base first, just so we can see where we're at, so we know generally what we're working at. All right, so I went ahead and put in our class base or our class bonuses and our characteristic bonuses. So we can see here that in our notice we have +10/+10 for 20, same for search, same for hide, and in our stealth we actually have a +15/+10, and so we start at 25. We're already off to a really good start, but we actually get more bonuses. So in Anima, you also get a natural bonus, which represents our character's natural inclination to evolve over time. So every time we level up, we add our attribute bonus again. But this actually got errated in the Spanish core exit. Now, I'm not going to show you the core exit book, mostly because I'm sure a lot of you can't read it. I guess, well, okay. Actually, I do have it. So here's the portion in question. Now, we have our natural abilities mentioned here, which this kind of represents our character's life before we became essentially level 1. So we gain 5 abilities at +10, and this is considered a natural bonus or an innate bonus. So this doesn't stack with class bonuses, or it does stack with class bonuses, and it doesn't go over any special limits. So we're going to get +10 to 5 other abilities, and we also get a natural bonus that we get to apply to a physical characteristic and a mental characteristic. So we get to apply our stat again to 2 different skills in our secondary abilities specifically. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually not that much. And it's a very, very, very annoying to show on a character sheet, but we're going to do our best. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the special bonus to, it's an innate bonus, so it's going to go to our bases. So we're just going to add 10 more to each of our bases here. And we get another +10. We only had 4 skills that we were really focusing on, and they do have to be in different skills. So I'm going to put our remaining +10 into climb, specifically because we are a rogue type character. So we're obviously probably going to be climbing into places that we shouldn't belong. So another +10 here just makes a lot of sense. Now, for our other natural bonuses, you can see over here on the left-hand side that the skills are kind of split between physical and mental. So the first 4, agility, con, dex, and strength, are physical, and int, perception, power, and willpower are mental. So we get to add our attribute again to 2 different secondary abilities based on 1 mental and 1 physical. So we're going to go ahead and notice is kind of one of our big ones. So I'm going to put it in notice, making this 30. And I'm going to put the other one into our stealth because that is our only primary one that is focused on a physical attribute. So now we can better decide how we're going to split up our secondary or our remaining development points. As we can see here, we have a 40 points in our notice, 30 in our search, 30 in our hide, and 45 in our stealth. So let's just try to get these to 80 because that's a really good baseline. So for notice, we're already at 40, so we only need 40 more points. So we're going to bump this up to 70, and we can see here that that will be, because it's a 1-for-1 cost, we only needed 40 more points. So that is going to be 40 of our points up here, bringing us to 400 out of 600 points. So we're already making some really good headway. Search, though, is 2-for-1, and it's not one of our primaries, so I'm not going to consider it first. I want to get our other primaries up, and hide is going to be our other major primary. So it's currently at 30, and this one is also 1-for-1 because subterfuge is 1-for-1 for us. So we need to get 50 more points in here, bringing this also to 70. So we're going to spend 50 points to make this 70. And we're going to go ahead and track it up here at the top. Now we can go back to search. Now search is 30 points, so we need 40, but this is going to cost us 80. So we're going to go ahead, or I'm sorry, not 40. This needs to be 50 points higher, 50 points higher. 50 points higher, so that's going to be 100 development points. That only gives us 50 points remaining, but our other one is in subterfuge and it's in stealth. Now, stealth, I feel like, is one of the ones we're going to want relatively to be our highest, as it's the one that we're going to use to sneak around people specifically. So it's okay if we just put our remaining 50 points into this, making that our highest secondary ability. So now I'm going to go ahead and real quick, I'm just going to add these up together to show us what our totals are going to be. All right, so going back up here to the top, in our climb skill, which we got as a bonus, we have 25 points because that was the 10 base plus our 15 in agility. Then we have our notice and search, both at 80, really good, really good. We have our hide at 80, and we have our stealth at 95 in a different font, which I desperately hate. Now, that puts us up to our 600 development points, and honestly, those 600 development points went into a handful of things on our character sheet. I mean, if I zoom out here, you probably will have a harder time reading, but you can see here, of the points we've added, there's just not a lot that we've actually added to our character sheet. It's actually not that much as long as you know generally what you want your character to do, and you're kind of focusing on those areas. Now, this game does not really benefit playing a jack of all trades. 25 points is not a small amount, but at a DC 80 for just a moderate check, a standard difficulty check, at least in the beginning of the game, we're going to have to roll a 55 or higher, which is a less than 50% chance. So that 25 points is really not good. We're not that good at climbing. We're better at climbing than anything else. And I will say as well, if you don't have at least 10 points invested in a skill, then you're considered untrained and you get a minus 30 every time you roll that skill check, which is really, really bad. So having a few skills at kind of low integers at least lets you try for those kind of checks, which is good. If you know you're going to be swimming, I definitely recommend having something in swimming at the very least. And notice and search are kind of just one of those standard adventures, like you're going to be looking for things or something's going to happen and you're going to want to notice it. That's always really, really good. Everything else is kind of just based on what you think you want your character to be good at. Now, we for sure could have just left many of these bases and just invested the remainder of our development points into one skill in particular, which is really good, but there are a lot of situations where one skill is just not going to cut it. So this kind of method of putting it into about 3 to 4 skills and focusing on those skills is really one of the best ways, and using a few remaining points, if you have any, to apply to things like the athletics tree is just really, really good, honestly. Acrobatics and athleticism are used in a lot of things. Climb is used in a lot of things. It's just really good to have points in all kinds of skills, honestly, if you ask me. But our character is designed for one thing and one thing only. We are a scout. And we're actually not done, even though we spent all our points. Because now we have our martial knowledge that we need to invest in. Now, martial knowledge is used for 2 things predominantly. Technically more, but 2 things predominantly. It's base key abilities and key techniques. Key abilities are kind of more standard. They apply most of the time. While techniques, you need to accumulate using this accumulation score until you get the proper amount, and then you use your key points to use a technique that allows you to punch a hole through a mountain, for instance, or run really, really fast for a few seconds. All kinds of really, really cool stuff. Our character is less on the supernatural side, but we're only level 1, and we can definitely develop our key skills more and more as we level up. But you can see this handy little chart here, which tells us how we can use our key points to add to our character. Now, if you want anything on this list, you need use of key, which is 40 points. So we're going to invest 40 points right away. You need to do this if you want to use pretty much anything here on this list. Now, after that, everything that is associated is connected by these little lines here that you can see. So key control is used for key detection, erudition, weight elimination, levitation, yada yada. Presence extrusion is on its own tree, so is key transmission, so is use of necessary energy, and Inhumanity and Zen. Inhumanity and Zen let you roll above a 280. We don't have to worry about that because we can't even roll above a 280 unless we get really lucky with some open rolls. And that's something that we really shouldn't be banking our character on. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to invest in the things that we want to do. Now, remember, from our class, we get a special bonus to key concealment, which lets us hide from characters who are using any kind of supernatural detection. Now we see key concealment is here under use of necessary energy. So in order to get key concealments that we need for our character, we're going to need to at least invest 10 of our points into use of necessary energy. Okay. And now we can pick up key concealment. I don't know why I didn't copy paste that, but oh well. So we've spent 60 points so far on our key abilities, leaving us with, if you can do the math, 85 points remaining. Again, I'm not trying to be derisive. I'm literally just, I want people to be able to calculate the math for themselves. And this is just what happened after running this game for so long, is I try to let people do the math. Forgive me. It's just old GMing habits. But anyway, so we've used 60 points of our 145, leaving us with 80 points remaining. Now, we're going to probably want to take key control. That's 30 more points, and that's a good hefty chunk of what we have remaining. So that's put us up to 90 points, leaving us with 55 points remaining. And now we're going to want to pick up key detection, because that's just a really good skill, and it lets us detect people at a distance without needing to see them. Now, in the book, we have key detection here with this little box that roughly indicates to us how far we can see people based on the level of key detection that we have. So our key detection, if it hits a moderate difficulty, can detect people at 15 feet away. How do we determine our key detection skill? Well, key detection is right here, and it says that our key detection is like a special secondary ability that we can calculate using the average score of our total martial knowledge and our notice score. If you want to know how to do an average, it also explains it right here. You add the two numbers together, and then you divide by 2. So on our character sheet, we're actually going to put that down in our special category here. And since it's the average, we're going to go ahead and do the math here. Now, this is where Anima just becomes a lot more than other games. We have 145 martial knowledge plus our 80 in our notice, which equals 225. And then we divide this by 2, which is 112.5. And then we round up. So that's 113. Ew, a not divisible by 10 or 5 number, but we're just going to have to deal with it. So 113 is what we're going to put down here, which is not bad, all things considered. We don't need to worry about any kind of bonuses or class benefits because we don't get that to key detection, but we do get that to key concealment. Now, key concealment is similar, but it's based rather on our martial knowledge and our notice, on our martial knowledge and our hide. So our key concealment skill is going to be, we're going to pull out the calculator again. Actually, we don't need to. It's the same exact score because they have the same exact numbers, but our class does give us a benefit to our key concealment of 5 per level. So it's actually going to be 118, and I'm just going to add that here right now. So our major key abilities that we're going to be using a lot, key detection and key concealment, are 118 and 113. And considering the key detection chart that we have right here, we are almost at the difficult. We're at 113 out of 120. So when we hit a 120, which we will roll our key detection, so we'll almost always hit that, we'll be able to detect the energy of living creatures up to 30 feet away. And typically you don't actually roll key detection. I was wrong. I was just thinking the wrong alley. This is what we would attain. So if we got to 120 in the skill, then we'd be able to, at base, find people up to 30 feet away. So we might want to change up some of our development points to get that additional few points up in order to make it where we can see people at 30 feet away, which is enough to cover most rooms. I'll add, making it really great for us to know how many people are in a room. Though 15 feet, I would say argue would also be generally really good at that. The 30 feet would be obviously a lot better. And whenever a character is trying to find us using some kind of supernatural detection, they'll need to go against a base DC of our key concealment, which is currently 118, which is really good. Though this does leave us with 35 points remaining. And I'm going to say that we're going to put this into our presence extrusion and aura extension for 20 points. This is just going to increase our base damage by 10, as presence extrusion allows us to affect energy just with our person, and then presence extrusion allows us, aura extension allows us to coat our weapon with this energy, and that also increases the damage of our weapon by 10 base, which is really good. And last but not least, we have 15 points remaining, which means we can buy essentially one more thing of a cost of 10, and then we'll have 5 points remaining. I'm going to say that we're going to pick up Erudition. Erudition allows us to sense the differences in people's energy, allowing us to differentiate energies that we're familiar with, essentially allowing us to detect friend from foe in rooms that we don't have line of sight into. So Erudition seems like a pretty natural pick to me, and this puts us up to a 140 rather, of our 145 total martial knowledge. Really good, and overall our character is really solid at what we want to do, and something to consider as well. Every time we level up is a shadow, we're going to gain 10 martial knowledge 25 martial knowledge per level. That's very good, but that also means that technically our abilities of key concealment and key detection will improve as we level up. Though granted, we'll probably be doing that because it's averaged. We'll probably be doing that through our notice and our hide rather than through our martial knowledge. But this also gives us 25 more points to mess around with as we level up. And that's going to allow us to do all kinds of cool things like flight, for instance, which is really, really cool. Or maybe even go into key techniques, which is also really good. Not for this video, but we'll be talking about key techniques and building a key-based character really soon. Oh, and I forgot to totally mention this during the weapon part, but the armored longcoat. So the armored longcoat has a very little requirement in armor, which is actually 0, but it has a natural penalty of -5. Now, this penalty goes away when you beat the armor's natural penalty, or the armor's armor requirement, by any number of points. So that 10 points you put in before beats 0, meaning we don't have that natural penalty to all of our physical actions while wearing the armor. And armor longcoat is essentially one of the better armors, as you can see in this little table here, as it has essentially slightly better armor than leather armor with an extra point in cold, but it's still an extra point. It still matters. So if you're going a character, and wear armor is just really good because you're going to find bigger and better armors, and you're going to want, probably eventually you're going to want to go up to like hardened leather or even complete leather. We could actually wear complete leather, though it does have a movement restriction, which reduces our movement by 1. Something to consider. So hardened leather, usually the way to go, but you want that 20 armor requirement, which means that maybe at level 2, if you're willing to put some points into your wear armor, you can get rid of this -10 by beating out the armor requirement. So something to consider, and the main reason why I mentioned it. Also, yeah, this is crazy. So this tells you the location. So enemies can technically aim around our armor. So for instance, the hardened leather is a breastplate, so they can aim for our arms and legs to get less armor. But the armored longcoat is full plate, which means it covers our whole body. So again, armor longcoat is just one of those really good armors. All right, now we need to fill out the rest of the derived stats, starting off with our base life points. So our base life points are altered by our class and what constitution we started with. Since we started with 9 constitution, which is really good, 7 gives you a base of 95 HP, but 9 gives us 120. So we have 120 plus our class multiple, which for Shadow is 5 per level. So we start off with 125 life points. Now, if you really wanted to, you could buy life point multiples, but they don't add very nice numbers. When you buy a life point multiple, which is indicated by this NO multiple here, you add your constitution score, not the bonus, the score directly. So if we bought any as this character, we'd add 9 points, which is not a lot, but what makes it worse is the shadow needs to spend 20 development points to gain 9 HP. Granted, if we had 10, then it would be, 20 for 10, which is kind of the 2 for 1, which is honestly not that bad. But if you have anything less than 10, there's really no point in buying these multiples. And your characters honestly get by well enough alone. And honestly, those development points are probably better spent on your character's defenses anyway, so you don't have to worry about how much HP you have. Another derivative we have is our initiative. So our base initiative in this leftmost category is if our character is not wearing armor and not wielding a weapon, which is indicated here in the weapon category with a 20. So you're going to fill this out, and then you're going to fill it out for your weapons and armor and other combinations. That is what this is for. But remember, all classes have a bonus to their initiative based on what class they are. So our shadow, for instance, actually has a really good initiative. They kind of average between 10 and 5, but 10 is really good. So we have 10 per level, meaning our character tends to be really quick in battle. All right, so our base initiative is 80. So when we roll for combat every round, or however your GM wants to run combat, you would roll 80 for base initiative if you're not wielding a weapon and if your character was butt-ass naked. Now, I'm going to fill in the rest of these categories. I think that they're pretty self-explanatory, and I'm also not going to fill in the armor and weapons. You just follow exactly what's written in the book. Our stats don't apply to them too much, except for in our weapon, of course. The strength bonus, your strength bonus is applied to your weapon, which is important to note for the final damage of the weapon. And another consideration as well is our movement is based on our agility. So our base movement is 10. What does that mean? Well, it's very weird and esoteric. So if you want to know how fast your character can move in feet per combat round, which is roughly 6 seconds, then you would see your movement value, which over here means that our character can move 115 feet in a round. But, and this is where it gets a little wonky, that's only if we're dedicating the full action to moving. So if we're dedicating a full action to moving, we move at 115 feet. If we don't, if we want a free move, more or less in this system, then you would move at a quarter of your speed. So a quarter of 115 is, I'm sure, some absurd fraction. I'm not going to do the math in my head. Yeah, 28.75 feet. Now, you can always round up if you want. 29 feet. Who knows how much that is really going to be. This does not do grids very well. It's just something to consider. Most of the time, I just ask the question in my head, could the character get there with their movement? Yes, no, okay, move on. You can use your athleticism's secondary ability to essentially sprint to try to move faster. As there's also a strength chart over here that's if your character wants to lift weight index, again, determined by your strength skill. So our character, for instance, could lift 130 pounds easily, and it could lift a maximum of 400 pounds. Not bad, not too scrawny. And I guess as well, I should make mention of another important chart here, which is our recovery or our regeneration score. So we have a regeneration score based on our constitution. Our character has 9, so we have 2 regeneration, which means every day of rest, our character restores 20 HP. And if we're not resting, we get 10 HP. And if we are suffering an all-action penalty due to injuries, then we reduce those penalties by 5 per day. This is pretty slow considering our character has 125 HP. So if we get really banged up in a fight, we would require several days of rest, if not a whole week, in order to get back up to snuff. Now, this is pretty good, honestly. All things considered, I've seen games with much worse levels of regeneration than this, and this feels pretty good. But it also can get really broken really fast if you let your players do it. There's an advantage that lets them get extra points in regeneration. And, well, you can see here, you can get up to, well, you can get up to 250 HP per turn. Granted, that almost never happens. But I have seen a character who can get like 1 HP per minute, which is really, really fast, all things considered. So we have built Dude Awesome Man, and this is just scratching the surface. This is just a fraction. I didn't even put in what class and what level we were. I guess that doesn't really matter. We know, you know what class we are. But this is just a fraction of the character creation in the game. This is a very decent character starting off. If you're playing in a very basic beginner game, this is a very good character to have because they can do a really good task pretty easily, and they're just really good in both combat and non-combat actions. I mean, having a stealthing character is always really good, and having a character who can detect people through walls is really good. Our stats are overall pretty okay, and honestly, I use a lot of these same build techniques when making any kind of character. Like, for instance, maxing out my attack and block, or attack and dodge. That's just something you do with pretty much any character you play. So that's something that you're probably going to be doing very frequently, and that cuts your development points down pretty considerably. Also, considerations for what weapons you're using is pretty consistent, and as well, wear armor is something that, like, you're either wearing armor or you're wearing a long coat. That's kind of just how it is. Like, there's not really much in between, honestly. The armor long coat is just really good to have. And yeah, I don't recommend doing anything more than about 3 to 4 skills that you're focusing on. And for skills you want to be good at least try to aim for 80 or get so close to 80 that you can roll over 80 more often than not. Especially because now, if I want to hit the next difficulty, then to hit a difficult check, I just need to roll a 40 or above, giving me a better than 50% chance on that check. Not great, but it's still pretty good, and that's the next level up for a task that I'm already pretty proficient in. Now, this is not an explanation of all the rules. We didn't even talk about fatigue, which is based on your con. We didn't even talk about the many different advantages and how they can radically change your character. This is, by all definitions, basic character creation. Now, I don't know how long this video is because I was kind of crafting the character sheet whilst doing this to kind of make it more organic. So I don't know if this is like an hour-long video. It could be an hour and a half. I really don't know, but I hope you all enjoyed. Leave a like, follow, subscribe, do all that kind of fun stuff. If you want more Anima videos, leave it down in the comments below. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.